What's up, everybody? It's Jared with Capture the Magic. And when it comes to Disney announcements, people hear D23, and really the first thing they hear is what new announcements are going to be made about the theme parks. And it seems this year there is not going to be an announcement at the Destination D23 event, and some people seem kind of disappointed in this. But I don't think this is anything that should shock people, but we're going to read through this article from Attractions Magazine. And then I'm going to give my reasons as to why I think Disney actually needs to get out of this habit that they are in terms of these announcements when they announce these new lands and attractions coming, because I actually think it does them a disservice in terms of the audience ultimately being, satisfied with things that are announced and then when they're actually done and they get to experience them. So, like I said, this is from Attractions Magazine. It says, no parks panel on itinerary for Destination D23 2025, but Villains Land news seems likely. Says there will be no parks panel during the Destination D23 convention happening at Walt Disney World in August 2025. However, there's a Disney Villains presentation which could include news about an upcoming expansion. It says breaking from tradition, 2025's Destination D23 convention will not have a parks panel, the informal name for an annual showcase of breaking news announcements for the future of Disney theme parks hosted by Josh D'Amaro, chairman of Disney Experiences. Destination D23 takes place August 29th through August 31st at Walt Disney World near Orlando, Florida. And when they said about the Villains event here thing, it says Disney Villains Icons of Evil. It's happening on Sunday, August 31st. It says join Disney Experiences and some of your favorite troublemakers for a panel discussion on how Disney Villains experiences come to life around the world. Hear directly from the creative minds behind new projects and attractions, plus enjoy a special Villains-themed medley to kick off Destination D23 Day 2. The description seems to tee up news about the upcoming Villains Lane opening at Magic Kingdom, but time will tell. Now, this D23 event is different than the one that they hold out in Anaheim that they use every 2 years, basically. So Destination D23 is held every 2 years in Orlando, opposite the much bigger convention in Anaheim, California, which is known as D23, the Ultimate Disney Fan Event, formerly known as the D23 Expo, where the Parks panel is also a staple of the weekend. Both events are hosted by D23, the official Disney fan club. Whereas the Anaheim event spans an entire convention center and arena, Orlando's is mostly contained to a Disney Resort hotel. This year, there is an after-hours party at Typhoon Lagoon as well. While most of Orlando's Destination D23 typically focus on history-based behind-the-scenes panels, the past few iterations of the weekend have still included a look at what's to come for the parks with D'Amaro or former chairman Bob Chapek before him. As in 2023, D'Amaro announced the reimagining of Test Track at Epcot, which just opened last month, and the supersized Anaheim version of the parks panel usually reveals major announcements of huge projects, as it did last year. Since there is no equivalent presentation listed in the 2025 itinerary, and the closest is a showcase from Walt Disney Studios, the film division of the Walt Disney Company. I actually think, and I've said this for a while, that I think it would be good for Disney to get out of this, I guess you'll call it a habit or this pattern of having these really big announcements about things coming. And the reason for that is you already had some big announcements last D23 about these new things coming to the Disney parks. On whatever level people are excited about that, they did have a lot of announcements on that. And you already have people wanting a parks panel about new things that are coming. And what really I think tends to happen, and really kind of human nature in my opinion, is it's like shiny object syndrome. You just want, you get a new thing that's announced and it's exciting, it's a dopamine hit, and then it's like, okay, what's the next new thing? And it just becomes about what is the newest thing that we can latch onto and say, oh, that sounds amazing, I can't wait for it. And really, it kind of does you a disservice because Disney got a lot of flack for a couple of D23s where everything was blue sky related, and I think a lot of that, though, was due to people were expecting bigger announcements off of Epic Universe opening very soon and Disney not having anything to announce, and a lot of people, I think, were just anticipating that would happen. I liken what Disney does in their announcements, kind of like what Apple does every year now, which is, every year there's a new Apple presentation about the newest thing coming for the iPhones or the iPads or whatever it is. People just have come to expect that to, see what the newest thing is. I think we're talking about theme parks. It can be exciting. People can hear these things, but also given from inception to completion, there's obviously a lot of things that can happen in terms of concept art, in terms of budgets, in terms of what you're actually going to do. And I think many times Disney feels pressure to have these big announcements, but it turns into an overpromise, under-deliver type of situation. And you can even argue Disney can have the best of intentions when announcing these things. And obviously, they want to have a big splash with the audience. And I think that leads to a situation where sometimes you're making things flashier, seem bigger than they maybe are going to be, whether that's on purpose or not. But I think whenever you have a situation in that where you get people hyped up for these things, you're showing concept art, they get real excited. There's such a long time before these things are done. A lot of changes can happen. And I think really what's happened with many times when it comes to Disney fan base or people, excited about things coming to the parks, even people that are really not critical of Disney too much, get into even, let's wait and see when it comes to what is actually completed versus, say, the concept art. And I don't think that's a good place to operate from. I think it would do Disney much better. And yet again, you can argue they've been taking some cues from Universal in many ways. But I think the way Universal does stuff that we're seeing play out in real time right now, I actually think is a better way to go about it. If you look at Rip Ride Rocket being replaced, that recently has closed down for good. And they've already started construction on that, and we don't know what's coming there yet. So instead of making a big announcement of what's coming, showing concept art, and having the excitement there, what Universal kind of tends to do, in my opinion, I think they lean into the speculation end of things, because speculation, first off, is fun. It's actually a really good sign of a healthy fan base, are people wanting to speculate on things to come. You see this in movies and TV shows. Whenever people are invested into something, it's like, oh, this character might do X, Y, and Z, or whatever it is. And it's a fun thing to do amongst the fan bases to discuss things that potentially could come to the parks or happen in a show or anything of that nature. So I think Universal does it that way. We're very likely, we probably won't know what's replacing Rip Ride Rocket for, I wouldn't be surprised, another year. I mean, it probably will be halfway through the construction potentially of the new ride before we actually get official word of what it's going to be. And then at that point, they get concept art released, and then the concept art ends up looking very, very similar, if not almost identical, to the finished product like we saw with Epic Universe. And I think that builds trust with the fan base. I think when you consistently show concept art that ends up being almost identical to the finished product, your audience and your fan base trust you a lot more. And I think when it comes to Disney, even if people are massive fans of Disney, I don't know how much trust they have given the recent things that Disney has built. The Epcot overhaul is a great example of showing concept art of all these things that are coming, and then the finished product being much, much different. Now, you can throw out all sorts of reasons as to why that happened, from COVID to budget cuts or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter why it's so much different, but it's just the fact that it is different. And this is a tendency Disney has many times about this, of showing this concept art and all these big promises. You look at Galaxy's Edge as well. A lot of things in Galaxy's Edge that were supposed to be there ended up getting tucked into the Star Cruiser Hotel. And there's many things that are still kind of coming to Galaxy's Edge that were promised back when that was announced. And I think that just creates a mistrust of the audience, and also puts this pressure that you have to deliver these major announcements or people are going to be upset. I think it would do Disney really good to get out of this habit of doing that, and just more or less allow speculation to take place and really get the audience out of this habit of expecting this, because I really don't know how much good comes of it, of getting people really excited about something coming and having such a long time before it's being delivered on, versus just allowing the natural speculation to occur. You can, say, hey, something's coming to this area. Let that speculation run a little bit. Let people get excited. Let a natural, I guess you could say, enthusiasm about what could come kind of happen here. So I'm personally not really surprised there's no parks panel, as well as we just had a bunch of announcements happen last year. So more than likely in this D23 or in a future D23, you're probably just going to get updates about the things that are coming to the parks in terms of what they're building, because they're not going to announce anything brand new here. Because if they were going to announce that, they would have had the announcement at D23 about Launch Bay going away for that new animation experience in Hollywood Studios. So the fact that they already announced that kind of gave you a really good indication that there was not going to be some major announcements at the D23 panel this year. And I think personally it would be much better for them to get out of this habit of doing this and kind of maybe take yet another cue from Universal, kind of how they handle it. And I think it would put less pressure on necessarily the concept art end of things, allow the speculation to take place. because I think Disney needs to build a little bit more trust with their fan base in terms of the things that they deliver on and not just having a lot of empty promises. So personally speaking, I actually think it's a good thing they don't have a parks panel this year. They might have some updates about Villains Land, but not having one goes against sort of what they've been doing. But I think they would be, again, I don't think you need a yearly panel about what's coming to the parks and maybe forcing things. And then that leaves you to where they had years they didn't have nothing to announce. It was blue sky ideas that really just left the fan base kind of angered. So I think potentially you could see these big announcements at these big D23 events maybe waning out a bit. Not that they won't ever do it again, but having it where you just feel this pressure every year or every 2 years to have these major park announcements. I don't think necessarily the way that Disney has been, running their projects in terms of how long it takes them to construct things ends up being the best thing for them in the end. And I think many times whenever something is announced and the final product doesn't match that, that is something that you're going to create mistrust, or they're not going to quite trust when you announce things. And I think that's kind of where Disney's at right now. And I think what they really need to concentrate on is delivering on these lands that they are building. Whatever, I know listen, I'm not happy about the Rivers of America going away. I know some people are upset about Muppet Vision 3D going away. But no matter where people stand on those things, Disney has got to deliver at a very high quality of whatever they are building in Animal Kingdom, Magic Kingdom, and Hollywood Studios. These things need to wow people. They need to bring in crowds. And they really need to be a sufficient answer to really what Epic Universe has done. And what Universal is doing is they're just going to continue to be aggressive and do more things and replace areas of their parks. And I think if these things that they're building don't deliver at the level they need to, I think it's going to end up hurting Disney yet again in terms of the audience and what they're expecting and really the hype level of things. So I think they need to focus more on delivering on these projects and not really announcing things just to appease the fan base. Because ultimately, if you don't appease the fan base on new announcements, but you do deliver on things that you're building in the parks, the audience is going to be happy with that. And maybe you just break the habit of them expecting these major announcements at these things. Because typically what happens is you announce them, people get really excited, they discuss it for a couple of weeks maybe, and then it just kind of dies down. And then it's like, well, what's the next thing? And even in the last D23, I think there was some, confidence loss from the fan base, given that they did announce, some of these things that are coming to the parks. People got excited about it. And then the next day, they were like, by the way, Rivers of America is going away, and so is Muppet Vision 3D. Like, it was just a lot of these things that, well, I don't think Muppet Vision was the next day, but shortly after the presentation, there's also the, like, by the way, these things are going away. And I think a lot of times with Disney now, it's, you have these big splashy announcements, and people are waiting on the, where's the but? What's going away? What's being replaced? Is it going to look like the concept art? So there's ends up being a lot more questions and not as much excitement around these things, potentially, versus I think the way Universal does it is you have a lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation, a lot of speculation. And, at the end of the day, you can be like, oh, I was right, I was wrong about this. But I do think it's a better way, personally speaking, in my opinion, to have new things coming to a theme park to kind of operate in that way. Or also what Universal does. Like, they announced Epic Universe. They're like, hey, this park is coming. And then they basically went radio silent while they were building it, and really not looking to feed the anticipation end of things. I guess you could say they kind of let that naturally happen, whether that's on social media or on YouTube, about people speculating on things to come. And I think that may be a better way to go about new things coming to the theme parks and really get out of this habit of just having these big splashy announcements by DMRO, trying to make, get some headlines here, and then ultimately leaving people feeling disappointed in the finished product. I don't think that's a good place to operate from, and hopefully they end up getting away from that. I think that would be good for them to do, but I guess we will see in future D23s if they do that, and if they're able to deliver on these lands that they are currently building, and of course, what does Universal do in the meantime, as well as they're going to continue to go back and forth and vie for your vacation dollar, which I think is great to do. More competition is a great thing. And we will see what happens here. But either way, that is going to be it, though, for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, as we do all this coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, what do you think about all this? And until next time, we will see you in the parks.